to Plow and Potato. I'm Sean Bonet.
I'm Joffrey Swaite.
Today we're going to be talking about words and how to be master of words.
Come ye masters of words,
Huh.
you who wield the big verbs. I'm totally warping Bob Dylan there, but that was a master of words. Already starting off with a controversial statement because half of you hate Bob Dylan.
Really? People hate Bob Dylan?
Dude, believe it or not, because he sings through his nose. I love that.
Yeah, I just cancel those people from my life. You don't like Bob Dylan? Your opinion doesn't exist anymore. Okay, when we talk about words, there's a reason why we seek to be good with our words. Because the Bible talks about the gift and jewel, the preciousness of them. You know, I'm thinking of something like apples of gold in a setting of silver.
Beautiful words right there.
That's right.
Powerful, impactful. Your life is changed by hearing that proverb. Apples of gold in a setting of silver. So here's a thing that people do. They say, I'm not a verbal person.
No one's ever said that to me.
They say it to me. Maybe because I'm excessively word-oriented or because I'm a language teacher. But man, I've heard that so often. And here's the problem with that. Is that we've talked before, like, say, about music. Mm-hmm. Everybody should try to be good at music.
Yes.
To whatever degree that is.
Right.
Everybody should try to be good at the verbs.
The verbs.
Because we have a responsibility. The world was created through speaking.
Yeah.
The Bible is given to us. We either hear it or we read it. Words matter. And of course, no one listening out there is going to say that words don't matter. But I think that often we try to find excuses for not being as masterful as we can be.
Yeah.
No matter how we're built, no matter what our inclinations, we should hold being as good as we can be with words as a high value.
Yeah, so let's figure this out. When we think about what it means to communicate, have words, those bits, we're being active, we're telling a story. Like, to talk is to share a story. Like, the word talk is really connected to the idea of tale.
Yeah.
So when we use our words, we're setting up a narrative.
Yes, and it's a back and forth narrative, right? It's not, we're not simply presenting a story, but we are engaging people in the story. You could say that communication is intercourse.
That's right. Because
Kimberly hates when I say intercourse for anything that's not about sex. And I admit I love to do it.
It's one of those words that
you and I are having intercourse right now.
Such a good intercourse. It's one of those scientific-y words that have like some formality to it, but there's also a completely strong, awkward bit to them.
But we're not just discoursing right now. We are definitely intercoursing.
Well, let's talk about intercoursing more, because when people are using their words, they're telling stories, they're having intercourse, and intercourse brings change because it brings birth. And so every time you're using your words, you're giving birth to something.
Woo.
So when you're having intercourse with everybody around you, we're just in this orgy-porgy.
Okay, I was fine with intercourse. I'm not fine with orgy. There is a sense. The fertility of words is an important
fertility
part
of words. There it is.
Man.
We're back on track.
We're talking about seed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're talking about making things. We are sub-creators to God's being a creator.
And we need to be masters of those words. So I made a note that in order to master something, we need to understand its magic. We need to understand its power.
Are you telling me that spelling is actual magic?
No, I'm not. I am not.
That's where the word comes from. We cast spells with our words. That's where spelling comes from.
You know, I do agree. I just got hit. Many people may know this. I'm not a good speller. And so anytime someone wants to talk about the virtue of spelling, like, no, because I'm not good at it, so it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, but actually, I do want to pause the narrative for a little bit to say that if you guys see misspellings in our social media posts,
it's my fault.
Yeah. Dude, I love that we hit that early. All right, spelling is magic.
And before we go back, and if you do say something misspelled, feel free to let us know so I can get better. I want to grow. But don't do it in the comments. Private message us so maybe people won't notice.
We're thinking of specific people right now.
We might be.
All right, so You're telling me that to master something, we need to understand the power, the magic of the thing.
That's right.
And I'm telling you that words in particular, wow, look at me. Words in particular.
I'm so good at speaking.
In particular are magical.
Yeah, they are. The magic of the words is being able to deliver and set a tone. So when we are being fertile with our words, we're setting our being, like our state of being and the being of others around us. And it takes incantation. We're changing it. So we're being creators, like you already waxed about. Oh, see, we talked about that. You're creating, you're setting tone, and you're casting spells on people based off of your words and according to their truthfulness and their relevancy and their potency.
Right. Potency. I mean, that's really a key word. So we're talking about, what if we're thinking practically and we're saying, okay, the basics of communication. If we are going to be communicators, if we are going to be people who create and co-create, I create a new you, you create a new me, we have to be masters of words, we have to be masters of logos, we have to have the ethos to deliver that word.
Yeah, because there's in order to be a master, first we need the element of truth. We need to know what the truth is, and we need to know it well. So that's one form that's going to let us deliver well. Then we also need to know how to be timely with that truth. We need to know how to deliver it at the right time. All of our words, there are all these different tools of communication and connecting. And we have to know when to use the scalpel. We have to know when to use the jackhammer.
Right.
We're building if it's
so
surgery
the method
thing.
Of delivery matters.
That's right.
Right. So we need to be reasonable. We need to be rational. Like, what's our rationale? We have to, things need to be based on sound premises.
That's right.
But not just, we want to be logical with our words. Logos. Yeah, dude. He pronounced the word the way I normally do, and I was making such an effort to say logos, which I think is what normal Americans say.
I like to hit the logos.
Ooh, logos. So we're being logical, but also we need to be thinking, what are you and I always harping on? Truth, goodness, and beauty. So you just talked about context. That's where a lot of that beauty is, right? Recognizing where the person is and laying out something that they can find beautiful in that moment, and we bring them to the truth.
In order to master words, you have to be a good dancer. So when you're a dancer, you're working with your partner, and when you're being a master of words, you're dancing with whoever you're speaking with. And you have to be able to be flexible. You have to be an artist with them, with your footwork, in order to get the logos into them.
Yeah.
And to draw out
to get the
a little ethos in them.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So timely truth, being relevant, using fitting and appropriate words, being kind, being good. Like we need to talk more in life, not necessarily in this episode, about being good to people with our words.
Okay.
And maybe that takes us to something I'd like to hit before we start getting like really into the meaning and the practice of what we're talking about. What about the flesh and bones of this thing? What about incarnation, right? Like, so we're going to talk about logos.
Yeah.
But let's poke a little bit at how words reflect incarnation and how words are in themselves incarnational.
That's right. Trying to explain somebody what a word is or an idea is a really challenging thing because it's so meta. So words are vehicles of incarnation. You have an idea and now you come to express it. You give revelation to something that exists. And so their incarnation, words take on the flesh of ideas, How do I express this reality, this premise, the way things are? It's through the words, and so it's incarnational. And it's coming to dwell among us.
And ultimately, that's exactly right, beautifully put. And ultimately, it can become literal flesh, right? And I can enflesh your words. You can say...
Through dictation. Is that what you're thinking?
No, what I mean is through my actions.
Ah, yes.
Right? So you can say, Joffrey, be a better baker, and here is how. Or Joffrey, be a better poet, here is how. Joffrey, be a better man, here is how. And then I set my hands to it, and I make that cake that you're teaching me how to make. And lo and behold, my hands have made a cake.
Yeah.
And that's by the power of words. Now, we watch all these how-to videos on YouTube. Let's recognize that that's beautiful and poetic to watch how-to videos on YouTube. And then let's think about, what's our responsibility?
Right.
Who are we speaking to?
Yeah.
And whose lives can we make more true, good, and beautiful by speaking, incarnationally?
Yeah, you're explaining the reality of what you were describing earlier, that it's magic, it's spells, it's changing. And so when you deliver the words on how to, be this way, do this, and then it happens, well, there's the magic right there. You've made a command, and then something is created from that.
Right.
And so as we're going around in our life, you need to be speaking, using your words in such a way that you're telling people to change, to be new, to be remade.
You need to feel the responsibility to do that.
Yeah.
Right? Don't just say to yourself, well, I'm a good cook, or I'm a good, basketball coach,
Yeah.
or whatever it is in life that I am, and those skills are going to do my talking for me. That's true. Communication is more than words.
Right.
But words themselves are magical, and we should feel the responsibility to wield that power well. I can spell better than you.
Yes, you can.
But that doesn't mean that you and I have different responsibilities when it comes to words, right? I mean, that's just...
Because that's a medium by which we're trying to use the magic of words, use the power of it.
And that magic and that power, we all have an equal responsibility to wield as well as we can, which we've said, this is probably the third time we've said that. That's the point of this episode,
we're just being biblical right now.
Use your words.
It was good that I reminded you, or however the words were said. So now we've talked about how to wield it. Let's talk about the battlefields, the inner dungeons in which we're whipping up these potions and working with these people. So one of the first places we can think about is the home. Mm-hmm. How do we use our words in our home? And we have to do that by considering, who are we using our words with? Words always have a receiver. Right. So we've got spouse and kids, maybe parents typically. How should a wielder of words speak to their spouse? How do they use that power well with them?
This is where I think it becomes really important to think about ethos.
Okay.
Right? Because I am, just objectively speaking, more skilled, I say objectively, you guys can go ahead and get up in the comment section and rip me to shreds if you wish. But I am more skilled with words than most.
Okay.
That's skill. But one thing I am often guilty of is saying something extremely well, laying it out there for my wife, and she feels all hurt and whatnot. What are you doing? This is my attitude, right? What are you doing? I'm just laying out the truth here.
Yeah.
Right? I just put it out there.
That's right.
Deal with it. Hurt feelings.
Yeah.
And that's on me, actually.
Yeah.
It's not on her. Right? I mean, it's not like, I'm not saying to accede to people when they're wrong, but I am saying that it's more than just the verbiage.
That's right. It relates back to the fittingness of it.
Yes.
Because you can lay out a beautiful exposition, but that might not be what's suitable for that moment or to that person. Now, I will say, especially for men dealing with their wives, what you should be doing is laying the truth out there cold and hard, and then bringing your wife along to understand and receive it. That's something we've found in our marriage is here's how things are. This is what you need to do, and there's almost a dryness. It's kind of forced in some ways. It's very direct. Mm-hmm. And then you explain, I'm doing it in this way because I love you.
Yes.
And you need to sort of gird yourself up in order to receive these words.
I definitely think there is a large sense, a big sense in which words can be used in a masculine fashion or a feminine fashion, right?
Yeah.
And we should embrace that. But what we should not do is make that an excuse for bad behavior, either as a man or as a woman, right? Mm-hmm. Either being a totalitarian jerk or being an equivocator.
Yeah.
Right? Those would be the two temptations.
Right.
And we should reject those. And yet embrace that there is a very masculine way I can use my words, and there's a feminine way in which my wife can use her words.
Yeah, and helping them understand, how do I receive the masculine words? And that's what you guys need to get better at, is not being afraid of delivering masculine words to your feminine wife.
Yes.
Because they're meant to receive.
And here's where the skill, that's exactly right. We're talking about intercourse again, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
But there's definitely a sense in which I am talking right now because I've lost my thought, and I'm hoping that as I speak, I'm going to remember what I was going to say, which is that, we think about teaching, perhaps, like what you were just talking about, is a way to talk about teaching, and we teach our wives and we teach our children. Both the parents teach the children. But, this is where skill with words does actually come in, right? So it's one thing to say, I figured out how to say X, or even how to transmit X with words.
Here's the logos.
Right. And then I also I know I need to be kind, right? And there are a lot of things I can use body language, I can use tone. It starts to get closer and closer to the verbal with it. But there are a lot of ways I can make that kindness happen. And those are important ways. But you can also use the language itself, the syntax of language, to communicate that kindness. So I'm an ESL teacher. I teach English as a second language. And I worked for years with Germans in the south of the United States. So I would go into the BMW factory and teach all these German engineers and executives and managers how to speak English well. Now, they had to pass English tests before even transferring to the United States, but they still had plenty to learn, and there were a lot of different levels. Some of them were just straight up fluent. The one thing they could never change was the fact that they were Germans. And they were in South Carolina. They weren't like in Yankee land. So you have the kindest, sweetest Americans working for and with the Germans.
Yeah.
So the most important set of lessons I had for most of my students was modal verbs. Could, would, should, may, might, right? Learn to say more things, oh, my German friend, with the word might, all right? Could, should, right? Because Americans more than Germans appreciate the syntactical illusion that they have agency.
That's right.
So an American boss doesn't say, be here tomorrow, usually. Like, you might be such a boss. But people don't say, be here on Saturday. So I need you here on Saturday. What they do is they say, could you come in on Saturday?
Yeah.
And both parties understand that I better be here on Saturday.
That's right.
Right? But there's that could is important. And then thinking from there, like, well, I'm talking to my wife, I'm talking to my colleague, I'm talking to my children. How could I phrase this in a way for it to be receptive, kind, good, etc.?
Especially in the workplace, which is the area you were just talking about, there needs to be a mix of the modal and the indicative.
Ooh, okay.
Yes, I did it. Which means you need to have syntax in which you say, this is how it is, where you have strong subject-verb relationship.
Absolutely.
There's no passive language.
These are
everything.
declarations.
That's right. Everything is active, and knowing it in times which you bring in the modalities, the modal verbs. That
y'all, subjunctive still exists in English. Use it.
In fact, actually use it less, because people are so bent on being using the subjunctive language. They're like, oh, we're trying to soften things. You know what? Just stop it.
So you're getting two different messages from us. I'm the kind person here, and Sean is the meanie. Everyone remember that.
And here's the thing, I'm not being mean, because
you're speaking truth.
What's better than good communication? Good communication is love. Okay, let's bring this episode to a close by talking about how to use words in one of the most sensitive places, the church. So we've got the words of the preacher coming to the congregants, and then we have words congregate to congregate.
Right.
The preacher, as he is preaching from the word.
And there's something special and sacramental there, right?
That's right. If you're under a preacher, you're entrusting that he's been ordained to be a minister of the gospel, somebody with authority, actual real authority over you. And then when you go to the Lord's Day service, there's more authority being placed on you based off what the preacher preaches. So you need to entrust yourself to the preacher to receive.
To the minister of the word.
That's right. As actually bringing you words that need to cast a spell on you.
Yes.
That are commanding you to obedience. And if you're a pastor, you need to step up to that role and not, sort of shimmy down to some storytelling world.
Absolutely. And as a congregant, as a member of the church, you need to be receptive and submissive. And that's an important part of the use of words, is hearing them.
That's right.
You have a responsibility. We've been using a lot of masculine language. We've been using a lot of potent language. We talked about words as seeds. So let's recognize that none of us go through our lives being only speakers. We must be hearers of the word and then doers of the word. And that means that there are times in which we must choose to be submissive. We must choose to be passive. We must choose to let the words change us and create newness in us.
That's right. My final charge, especially to the church, to that congregation to congregation level, is learn the truth. And also learn to be timely with the truth. Timely truth. Be the fitting apples. Be the delectable jewel. And the reason we use these imageries of jewelry and food is because there's a high artisan factor there. There's a lot of precision taking place in order to deliver a gorgeous product. There's very fine detail in it. So you can't just have the gasoline, the fuel, which is the truth, but you need to be able to put it in a vehicle that it's going to take somebody somewhere. You've got to be able to dance with people. You have to be able to work with the colors before you. And then by doing that, you'll navigate your strife that you find among yourselves better.
You can be clever with words. That's what the navigation is. My final charge would be that you men, you women, get better at using words. Read poetry, read stories, pay attention to how things are made and to how people speak. Emulate, imitate. So, I've had people through my life praise me for my public reading. Okay, so my ability to read well in public. And what I've often told people is, well, I practice. I actually practice reading aloud. And not like practice by doing it a lot, although that may be true as well. Like I actually sometimes read to a mirror because I want to be a good public reader.
Right.
Now that's just one tiny aspect. In fact, that's one in which I'm not being particularly creative. There's some creativity to it. But don't be ashamed to practice speaking well.
And then another tip would be, don't be afraid to pause. I learned from a professor who's not really the greatest speaker, but he takes great care to have all of his words land exactly where they want.
It's really compelling.
And what he would do is pause when he was talking. He'd like say something and then he'd think about what he's going to say and then deliver it. And I try to do that myself so that I'm not rambling.
I've always admired
I still ramble.
I've always admired people who do that well, though. It may even be someone who doesn't have a powerful voice or great inflection or control. But then you find yourself suddenly, when they pause, just hanging upon their lips. So find your way.
And you respect them more because you realize they're trying to be thoughtful.
Yeah, and I personally realize I can't do that.
Because you just want to fill in the gaps. I can't. So
we can all get better.
That's right. So as you go about trying to be a master of the word, be rigid with the truth and be fleshy with its application in time.
Ooh.
You like that?
I loved it. Hey, I heard that you are working on a new sign-off catchphrase.
I am, and I completely forgot it. But here's the general idea. We'll workshop it. It's something about bringing the meta to, I can't remember. So I'll try to come back to it. What's your name? Say it all, please.
So on